Om Jnanatirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurumilitanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Om Vishnupad Purnamansa Pariprajaka Ashtotra Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath, Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mahi Ki Jai, Shamana Mahi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Bol.
Jai Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu, for Kirtan. And welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. I'm sorry, Sri Caitanya Caritamrita class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. Today is Thursday, June 1st, 2023, and we are reading in Adi Lila, 6th chapter, and we are in the middle of text 14 and 15 purport. And We look forward to your comments and questions, so please use the raise hand feature or simply unmute yourself and speak when Maharaj asks for questions, or you can type your comments into the chat box, but just don't send any chat messages while Maharaj is reading. It makes it more difficult to read. And at the end of class, we'll post some links in the chat that you can share with your friends so they can attend as well. And if anyone wants to lead the closing kirtan, please send me a message in the chat. Maharaj, we're glad that you could be with us. Where are you today?
I'm in New York City, Brooklyn.
New York City. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Tulsi Priya, and thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, as Tulsi Priya mentioned, Adi 6, 14, and 15. We're deep in the purport. Let's look at the verse. Just Maya Yachetui Angsha Nimitta Upadan. Maya Nimitta Hetu Upadan Pradhan. Oh, yeah. Purusha Yishar Aiche Dvi Murti Haya Vishva Shrishti Kore Nimitta Upadan. Just as the external energy consists of two parts, the efficient cause, nimitta, and the material cause, upadan, Maya being the efficient cause and pradhan, the material cause. So Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, assumes two forms to create the material world with the efficient and material causes. There's going to be a lot of discussion here about the causes of material creation, and we're beginning in the midst of the purport. The great Vaishnava philosopher Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan has very nicely explained the materialistic conclusion in his Govinda Bhasha, a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. He writes as follows. The Sankhya philosopher Kapila has connected the different elementary truths according to his own opinion. That means the atheistic Kapila. Material nature, according to him, consists of the equilibrium of the three modes, three material qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Material nature produces the material energy known as Mahat, and Mahat produces the false ego. The ego produces the 5 objects of sense perception, which produce the 10 senses, 5 for acquiring knowledge and 5 for working. The mind and the 5 gross elements. Counting the Purusha, or the enjoyer, with these 24 elements, there are 25 different truths. The non-manifested stage of these 25 elementary truths is called Prakriti, or material nature. Okay, do you want to start recording again? The qualities of material nature can associate in 3 different stages, namely as the cause of happiness, the cause of distress, and the cause of illusion. Quality of goodness is the cause of material happiness. Quality of passion is the cause of material distress. And the quality of ignorance is the cause of illusion. Our material experience lies within the boundaries of these three manifestations of happiness, distress, and illusion. For example, a beautiful woman is certainly a cause of material happiness for one who possesses her as a wife. But the same beautiful woman is a cause of distress to a man whom she rejects or who is the cause of her anger. And if she leaves a man, she becomes the cause of illusion. The two kinds of senses are the 10 external senses and the one internal sense, the mind. Thus, there are 11 senses. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Bhupakala Mayam Tadati Shabadambikam Vandehan Shri Uno Shri Chatapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sarvajatam Svahagana Gaganatam Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Parijana Sehitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Svahagana Mudita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Holy Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. So the Sankhya means counting. Sankhya philosophy involves counting the material elements, analyzing the different material elements. But the Sankhya taught by the atheist Kapila is different from the Sankhya of Lord Kapil Dev, the personality of Godhead. In many regards, the two philosophies are identical or parallel. We don't have issues with these descriptions of the elements evolving from one another, one after the next. But now we'll see where we strongly differ. According to Kapila, that is the atheist Kapila, material nature is eternal and all-powerful. Originally, there's no spirit, and matter has no cause. Matter itself is the chief cause of everything. It is the all-pervading cause of all causes. Well, here we find that we're entirely at odds with the atheist Kapila, who is entirely, with whom materialistic scientists, reductionistic scientists, would seem perfectly at home. There's nothing beyond material nature. Everything boils down to material elements and their interactions. This is all fine for reductionistic scientists, and so they might find some affinity with the atheistic Sankhya. just as they often find affinity with Buddhism. The shared quality being that in both philosophies, we don't have any spirit and we don't have any God. We only have matter. The Sankhya philosophy regards the total energy, Mahat Tattva, the false ego, and the 5 objects of sense perception as the 7 diverse manifestations of material nature, which has 2 features known as the material cause and efficient cause. The Purusha, the enjoyer, is without transformation, whereas material nature is always subject to transformation. But although material nature is inert, it is the cause of enjoyment and salvation for many living creatures. Its activities are beyond the conception of sense perception, but still one may guess at them by superior intelligence. Again, this is the materialistic method, essentially guesswork, taking what we know and trying to figure out what we don't know. Whereas the Vedic process is to hear from Vedic conclusion from enlightened authorities. Let's do that again. Good. Material nature, they say, is one, but because of the interaction of the 3 qualities, it can produce the total energy and the wonderful cosmic manifestation. So, aparaspra sambhuta kimanyat kamahoitukam. Such transformations divide material nature into 2 features, namely the efficient and material causes. Purusha, the enjoyer, is inactive and without material qualities, although at the same time he's the master, existing separately in each and every body as the emblem of knowledge. The Purusha, of course, is the living entity. It's a little difficult to follow what their idea about the living entity is. It's without activity, aloof from all kinds of enjoyment or superintendence. That's what we can guess. Sankhya philosophy, after describing the nature of Prakriti, material nature, and Purusha, the enjoyer, asserts that the creation is only a product of their unification or proximity to one another. With such unification, the living symptoms are visible in material nature, but one can guess that in the person of the enjoyer, the Purusha, there are powers of control and enjoyment. When the Purusha is illusioned for want of sufficient knowledge, he feels himself to be the enjoyer, and when in full knowledge, he is liberated. In the Sankhya philosophy, the Purusha is described to be always indifferent to the activities of Prakriti. Well, any questions so far? Comments? Kendra,
Yes.
it seems unfair to posit that matter is the ultimate cause, especially since matter itself seems to be causeless, and there's no real reason for it to exist. Yes, we're going to come in the purport as we go along to Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan's refutation and rejection of the atheistic Sankhya philosophy. And certainly these are strong points against it. Why make it the ultimate cause? There's no reason even for it to exist. Srila Prabhupada, in one lecture I remember, asserted that there has to be an absolute truth, the cause of all causes. And then he said the next question is whether that cause is conscious or not conscious. Is it inert like a stone, or does it have consciousness like a living being? That's the question to be answered. And of course, we see that stones don't take initiative for anything, or no inert being by its very nature takes interest in anything, but conscious living beings put things in order, make things happen. So yes, therefore the absolute truth must be conscious, must be personal. And the ultimate feature of the absolute truth is the personality of Godhead. Anything more here? Okay. Sankhya philosopher, Panchatattva Prabhu, would you like to read a paragraph or two? My voice is not helping me out today.
Of course, Gurudev. The Sankhya philosopher accepts three kinds of evidences, namely direct perception, hypothesis, and traditional authority. When such evidence is complete, everything is perfect. The process of comparison is within such perfection. Beyond such evidence, there is no proof. There's not much controversy regarding direct perceptional evidence or authorized traditional evidence. The Sankhya system of philosophy identifies three kinds of procedures, namely parinamat, or transformation, samanvayat, or adjustment, and shaktitaha, or performance of energies, as the causes of the cosmic manifestation.
Yes, we touch upon epistemology here. What are the sources of knowledge that we accept? And here Kapila says direct perception, hypothesis, and traditional authority. In Sankhya philosophy, or in different expositions of the acharyas, there are different authorities accepted. Prabhupada summarizes them as direct perception, hypothesis, and shruti, or hearing from authority. And these are mentioned here also. Sometimes other sources of authority are mentioned, but finally, shruti is hearing from Shastra, especially, is considered the first class way of getting knowledge. More?
Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, in his commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, has tried to nullify this conclusion because he thinks that discrediting these so-called causes of the cosmic manifestation will nullify the entire Sankhya philosophy. Materialistic philosophers accept matter to be the material and efficient cause of creation. For them, matter is the cause of every type of manifestation. Generally, they give the example of a water pot and clay. Clay is the cause of the water pot, but the clay can be found as both cause and effect. The water pot is the effect, and clay itself is the cause, but clay is visible everywhere. A tree is matter, but a tree produces fruit. Water is matter, but water flows. In this way, say the Sankhites, matter is the cause of movements and production. As such, matter can be considered the material and efficient cause of everything in the cosmic manifestation. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan has therefore enunciated the nature of pradhan as follows. Quote, material nature is inert, and as such it cannot be the cause of matter, neither as the material nor as the efficient cause. Seeing the wonderful arrangement and management of the cosmic manifestation generally suggests that a living brain is behind this arrangement, for without a living brain, such an arrangement could not exist. One should not imagine that such an arrangement can exist without conscious direction. In our practical experience, we never see that inert bricks can themselves construct a big building.
Yes, this is practical. The materialistic Sankhya says material nature does everything. You don't need more than that. But we see practically that consciousness is required and that consciousness is not a product of material nature. Prabhupada's example here is strong, that the pieces of a house don't self-assemble themselves. It requires conscious direction for them to be specified and assembled. Without consciousness, nothing happens. Okay.
The example of the water pot cannot be accepted because a water pot has no perception of pleasure and distress. Such perception is within. Therefore, the covering body or the water pot cannot be synchronized with it. Sometimes the material scientist suggests that trees grow from the earth automatically, without assistance from a gardener, because that is a tendency of matter. They also consider the intuition of living creatures from birth to be material. But such material tendencies as bodily intuition cannot be accepted as independent, for they suggest the existence of a spirit soul within the body. Actually, neither the tree nor any other body of a living creature has any tendency or intuition. The tendency and intuition exist because the soul is present within the body.
Yes. Our Sadhaputta Prabhu has written an essay on intuition. It appears in, I believe, mechanistic and non-mechanistic science, where he's elaborately traced this idea that intuition or inspiration just proceeds from material causes. And he goes about it mathematically. What you'd have to do to get inspiration from just the material constituents of the brain comes to be more than we can reasonably expect. The mathematical unlikelihood of it is something he demonstrates. So the he takes it as an instance. You see that there's intuition or inspiration, and he gives various examples, composers to whom symphonies just sort of appeared in their brains, all of a piece, great mathematicians who had proofs or theorems that were just came to them, and even that haven't been proved till many decades later, but they just came. So where does this come from? And Sadhaputta goes through the various reductionistic alternatives and shows them to be feeble, and therefore comes to the point that this inspiration or intuition comes from a higher source of consciousness and not from some material arrangement. So that's a sort of a modern version of the same arguments given here, that intuition just comes about, or that let's see, yeah, material tendencies are sort of just built into material nature. We find that it's not, that material nature is not so sophisticated as to be able to account for these things. That therefore we have to go to the presence of soul within the body, and finally the super soul, the ultimate source of consciousness. Okay. Oh wait, there's two comments. Like a dictionary coming out of a printing press explosion. Yeah, that's something improbable. Press explodes and there's a dictionary. Kendra, not properly attributed to Satiputta Prabhu, but here's his On Inspiration essay on Krishna.com, and he's given the URL in the chat box. Okay.
In this connection, the example of a car and driver may be given very profitably. The car has a tendency to turn right and left, but one cannot say that the car itself, as matter, turns right and left without the direction of a driver. A material car has neither tendencies nor intuitions independent of the intentions of the driver within the car. The same principle applies for the automatic growth of trees in the forest. The growth takes place because of the soul's presence within the tree.
Yeah. I remember while at college, the B.F. Skinner was all the rage back in the late 60s, early 70s. And there you had almost a totally mechanistic picture of human consciousness. It was really nothing but sort of laws of, there was nothing more to a human being than mechanical interactions. As a rat responds to stimuli by pressing on a lever or what have you, living entities just respond to various stimuli. And so they're really nothing more than machines. This was the bleak picture of given by Skinnerian psychologists at the time. Satiputta mentions the vision of a human being as nothing more than a Turing machine, which was basically a computer, an early early expression of a computer, Turing machine, after the British mathematician. And looking at it and just seeing that there's no meaning to this. If we're nothing more than machines, what does it matter whether we exist or don't exist? Our life is meaningless. That, of course, is apart from, it doesn't demonstrate that the concept is true or untrue. It's possible that that's all there is, and therefore, well, tough luck, that's reality. And so your life is meaningless, but what of it? But here, even the notion that this explains things adequately is challenged by Baladev Vijayabhusha. Matter doesn't have what it takes to manifest anything independently. Yes.
Sometimes foolish people take it for granted that because scorpions are born from heaps of rice, the rice has spread the scorpions. The real fact, however, is that the mother scorpion lays eggs within the rice, and by the proper fermentation of the rice, the eggs give birth to several baby scorpions, which in due course come out. This does not mean that the rice gives birth to the scorpions. Similarly, sometimes bugs are seen to come from dirty beds. This doesn't mean, however, that the beds give birth to the bugs. It is the living soul that comes forth, taking advantage of the dirty condition of the bed. There are different kinds of living creatures. Some of them come from embryos, some from eggs, and some from the fermentation of perspiration. Different living creatures have different sources of appearance, but one should not conclude that matter produces such living creatures.
Yeah. I remember many some decades ago, having read a book by one Dr. Oparin, who was a Soviet scientist, in which he proposes that life comes from matter. It's interesting that in the first part of his book, he goes through sort of a historical review of various notions of spontaneous generation. The notion that life can be spontaneously generated from matter in some form or other. And he cites various examples from Greek writings and others as we go along, but even more current scientific thought. If I remember, Pasteur ran into opposition because he presented that there were these microbes all over the place that would grow and cause whatever they might cause, disease particularly. And his contemporaries proposed that these so-called germs or what have you be produced spontaneously from material combinations. If you had the right material stuff, then the germs would grow. And so Pasteur, if I recall, stopped up a bottle, sucking out all the air and so on, and maybe heating it also, and nothing grew. And he said, "There you are." And they said, "No, you've changed the circumstances." So he developed a sort of a complex arrangement by which a test tube or what have you had a crooked neck at the top, and then you heated the neck and basically prevented living beings from entering into the environment. And finally, his experiment was sufficiently comprehensive that his contemporaries had to agree that the elements or the atmosphere within the test tube were insufficient to account for the presence of these living beings. They gave in and said, "Okay, we accept that they're coming from outside. They're not spontaneously generated from our nutrients." And then Oparin speaks of other examples of belief in spontaneous generation and shows how they're all defective. Then he goes on and presents his own. The picture in which the primordial soup develops consciousness at a mature stage. And he doesn't seem to, or I don't really understand what he thinks about his own position in terms of the examples he's just refuted, because really he's just giving a more sophisticated version of the same idea that life spontaneously arises from matter. So Prabhupada calls this the philosophy of the rice and the scorpions. We see rice and we see scorpions crawling out of the rice. So we think that the rice has produced the scorpions. Not so. Okay.
The example cited by materialists that trees automatically come from the earth follows the same principle. Taking advantage of a certain condition, a living entity comes from the earth. According to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, every living being is forced by divine superintendence to take a certain type of body according to his past deeds. There are many varieties of bodies, and because of a divine arrangement, a living entity takes bodies of different shapes. When a person thinks, "I am doing this," the "I am" does not refer to the body. It refers to something more than the body or within the body. As such, the body as it is has neither tendencies nor intuition. The The tendencies and intuition belong to the soul within the body. Material scientists sometimes suggest that the tendencies of male and female bodies cause their union, and that this is the cause of the birth of the child. But since the Purusha, according to Sankhya philosophy, is always unaffected, where does the tendency to give birth come from? Sometimes,
yeah, again, aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kamohitakam. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is referred to as a demonic philosophy. The Purusha and Prakriti combine, and that's the source of life. But here the argument is given, why should the Purusha want to combine with the Prakriti? If he's unaffected by Prakriti, which he's said to be according to Sankhya, earlier we heard he's unaffected, then why is he attracted? So again, the defect is that we keep stopping short and not tracing back further causes, when we need a further cause because of the inadequacy of the causes presented. If you present that Prakriti and or Purusha, the living entity and material nature are sufficient, it's not sufficient. That doesn't explain the circumstances adequately. We still have to ask where this Purusha came from, where this Prakriti came from, why they're in the state they're in, and so on. But none of that is explained here. We're just supposed to stop at these material combinations and say, well, that's everything. That's something like chickening out, not standing up to the larger challenge of explaining the source of everything. Okay.
Sometimes material scientists give the example that milk turns into curd automatically, and that distilled water pouring from the clouds falls down to earth, produces different kinds of trees, and enters different kinds of flowers and fruits with different fragrances and tastes. Therefore, they say, matter produces varieties of material things on its own. In reply to this argument, the same proposition of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, that different kinds of living creatures are put into different kinds of bodies by the management of a superior power, is repeated. Under superior superintendence, various souls, according to their past activities, are given the chance to take a particular type of body, such as that of a tree, animal, bird, or beast, and thus their different tendencies develop under these circumstances.
Yeah, the reductionists can't really explain why different bodies are there and why different persons are living in these different bodies. They just say it's by chance. And as we've discussed many times in this class, chance as a cause doesn't explain anything. That is to say, chance doesn't work as a cause. And I've given, I won't repeat examples, but or should I? Yeah. If Google reports that there's an 80% chance of rain, it's not that probability of rain causes the rain. There has to be some other cause. Just to say that it was statistically likely doesn't serve as a cause. It's not a demonstration of causality. It's something else. Okay.
The Bhagavad Gita 13:22 also further affirms, Purusha prakriti stohi punkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sad asad joni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. The soul is given different types of bodies. For example, were souls not given varieties of tree bodies, the different varieties of fruits and flowers could not be produced. Each class of tree produces a particular kind of fruit and flower. It is not that there's no distinction between the different classes. An individual tree does not produce flowers of different colors or fruits of different tastes. There are demarcated classes, as we find them among humans, animals, birds, and other species. There are innumerable living entities, and their activities, performed in the material world according to the different qualities of the material modes of nature, give them the chance to have different kinds of lives. Thus, one should understand that pradhan, or matter, cannot act unless impelled by a living creature. The materialistic theory that matter independently acts cannot therefore be accepted. Matter is called prakriti, which refers to female energy. A woman is prakriti, a female. A female cannot produce a child without the association of a purusha, a man. The purusha causes the birth of a child because the man injects the soul, which is sheltered in the semen, into the womb of the woman. The woman, as the material cause, supplies the body of the soul, and as the efficient cause, she gives birth to the child. But although the woman appears to be the material and efficient cause of the birth of a child, originally, the purusha, the male, is the cause of the child. Similarly, this material world gives rise to varieties of manifestations due to the entrance of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu within the universe. He is present not only within the universe, but within the bodies of all living creatures, as well as within the atom. We understand from the Brahma Samhita that the Supersoul is present within the universe, within the atom, and within the heart of every living creature. Therefore, the theory that matter is the cause of the entire cosmic manifestation cannot be accepted by any man with sufficient knowledge of matter and spirit. Materialists sometimes give the argument that as straw eaten by a cow produces milk automatically, so material nature under different circumstances produces varieties of manifestations. Thus, originally matter is the cause. In refuting this argument, we may say that an animal of the same species as the cow, namely the bull, also eats straw like the cow, but does not produce milk. Under the circumstances, it cannot be said that straw in connection with a particular species produces milk. The conclusion should be that there is superior management, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, where the Lord says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. The Supreme Lord says, Mayadhyakshena, under my superintendence. When he desires that the cow produce milk by eating straw, there is milk. And when he does not desire it, the mixture of such straw cannot produce milk. If the way of material nature had been that straw produced milk, a stack of straw could also produce milk, but that is not possible. And the same straw given to a human female also cannot produce milk. That is the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita statement that only under superior orders does anything take place. Matter itself has no power to produce independently. The conclusion, therefore, is that matter, which has no self-knowledge, cannot be the cause of the material creation. The ultimate creator is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yes. The material nature is arranged in, we may even say, unusual ways, that things happen that we might not expect, or things don't happen that we would expect. Things have their own quirky arrangement or their own particular arrangement. And the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I'm the cause of everything. It's not that matter causes everything. And as discussed so many times, matter doesn't have its own initiative, and doesn't have it doesn't have its own initiative for creating everything. It just acts as an intermediate cause, but not as the ultimate cause. The ultimate cause is the personality of Godhead. Now, it says from Devahuti Putra Kapila, Sri Bhagavan Vacha Karmana Daiva Netrena Chantur Deho Papataye Striya Pravishta Udaram So Neta Kanashrayaha. Personality of God had said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. So this is the Vedic conclusion. Yes.
Raj, I'm reminded at this point of there's a naturalist, his name is David Attenborough, and he did a lot of research of different species of life all over the world and produced very compelling documentaries about the extraordinary manifestations of animal behavior and also of beauty. And he did this thing covering birds of paradise and their dances and their rituals and so forth. And anybody watching it with an iota of consciousness of the influence of the divine or control of superior intelligence over material nature cannot possibly miss the fact that this is some sort of extraordinary creation by higher intelligence.
Yes. Those who miss it, Prabhupada said, are dull, they're prosaic, they're dull. Kendra says, regarding Kim Anyat Kama Haitukam, why should there be desire in the first place? Desire is a symptom of consciousness and drives activity in a very specific way. Yes, these are the same conclusions. Tulsi Priya.
Jai Maharaj. My question, to me at least, it seems related, and that is, how does, I don't know if Sadhuputta has ever explained this, but how does the brain work according to the Vedic conception? Because my understanding of the brain from the scientific viewpoint is that, there actually, I don't even really know, but there's just sort of energy flitting about, between the neurons, and somehow or other, by that means, a person can remember an entire movie they once saw, or the Gettysburg Address, or whatever, that there's somehow things stored in the brain, and that has never made sense to me. And I was wondering if Sadhuputta has ever explained how it is that we're able to remember so much, if the brain has something. I talked to him once about this, but I wasn't able to convey some ideas that I had, and so I wasn't able to get an answer. But I was just wondering if maybe you had an easier way to explain it.
Well, Akhandadi Prabhu, working from Sadhuputta's contributions, has taken on some of these arguments, which have become more, present in scientific discussion since Sadhuputta Prabhu's time. Other scientists have noticed these discrepancies, and some of them have felt compelled to deal with them. And it appears from the empiric evidence that there's not enough data brought from the senses to the brain to sufficiently define what we see or what we hear. This is one problem that Khandadi Prabhu has spotlighted, that if you saw, say, the amount of, you see a dog and there's a picture of the dog in your vision, but in fact, the amount of data transmitted down the optic nerve isn't enough to specify what you see. It would give you sort of a ghost vision, not the fully detailed picture that we experience. So he asks, how is that? How is it that we get the full picture, even though the mechanics don't seem to support it? He's also asked why we get the, now what am I thinking? You know, that experience has a sort of a feel to it, it's experienced. Experience is experienced. Perception is something that has finally an experiential locus, an experiential. It is an experiential phenomenon. And why should things be experienced the way they are? Just if all you have is data, why is data felt this way or that way? Why is it presents? Why does certain data give you an experience of orangeness or of redness? Why does pain exist in the form that we experience? These are things that when you go deep into them are puzzling, if we have nothing more than matter to account for them. Yeah, qualia brings up the word qualia, which is the experiential dimension of the way the data comes across. And Sadhguru gives the example that you could rig up a machine that would sense a red light, and which would then print out the message, I see a red light. That machine wouldn't have the experience of a red light, which is something that we do have. So these come in the ambit of what they call qualia, the experiential dimension of things, the instances of perceived experience. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention also, I read something years ago. I was looking up some information about brain differences between men and women, you know, the white matter and gray matter. And one thing I found, having nothing to do with white matter or gray matter, was that they say that, you know, like, let's say if you want to move your arm, the idea is that your brain sends a signal very quickly to your arm and you raise your arm. But there had been other research done showing that it isn't that simple. They test they put sensors on the body or whatever, and they see that when a person moves their arm, it goes sometimes, maybe not all the time, but sometimes it goes from the arm to the brain, and then the brain sends a signal back again. And it sort of conveys the idea that there's intelligence within the arm itself that causes or initiates movement and sends the message to the brain, I'm going to move, and then the brain sends some other signal back again. So I thought that was interesting, that there's, you know, it's not all centrally located necessarily, that there's
that all would be amenable to a mechanistic description, whether things start from the brain and go to the arm, or start from the arm to go to the brain. Still we'd be saying, well, there are these material interactions that take place, and that's the whole story. Wherever you located the brain or the muscles, as another Shage says, muscle memory, that's still material. But the what Prabhupada's arguing here is that material nature alone can't account for these things. Why would, why a dead body doesn't experience these things, doesn't do anything, and a living body does. So this essential feature of the living body is consciousness, and the hard problem of consciousness is there. How is it that consciousness exists at all? All right, let's stop here, and we can have some kirtan.
Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
I Om Vishnupad Punaman Suparipad Jukacharja Ashto Tarasata Sri Shrimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Tham Ki Jai Navadip Tham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Jamunamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Go Premanande. Thank you, Krishna Kaunti, and thank you to all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Amazing class. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Sharp.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Madhupati. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Class links are in the chat box. You can share with your friends, and we look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayādvaita Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. Sanatana Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari, Hari.